Wouldn't mind starting the recording? Thank you. So welcome everyone to the February 1st Freight Stakeholders Working Group. Hopefully you can all see the agenda posted here. So I'm going to scroll down really quick. So we're going to have a packed agenda today. So we're going to go through the first items pretty fast, but I wanted to see if everyone could glance really quick at number 2, the approval of the meeting minutes. And I will scroll down in case you did not see this earlier. So let's scroll down here. And if someone wouldn't mind approving the minutes, or if there are any edits, please let us know. I went a little fast. And again, this is from, I believe, September 28th, our meeting from that time. If you wouldn't mind, I think most of you can mute and unmute. If you wouldn't mind for just approving the minutes. Not.
So Carrie, to help you out here, I was just going to add, do we need to call for a first and a second?
Yeah, thank you,
So
Elizabeth.
if there's a
Yes.
member of the committee, you're welcome. If there's a member of the committee that can offer a first and approval of the minutes from the last session, which was in September 28th, 2020, just looking for a member to call for a first and a second. We can call for a vote.
Motion to approve the September 28th, 2020 meeting minutes of Freight Working Group, Rivera, Chula Vista.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone can second?
Yeah, Bueller. Yeah, let's see if we can get a second for that. Somebody that feels comfortable offering a second to the minutes from September 28th. Is that Michael? I thought maybe I heard Michael talking. Just looking for a second and encouraging everyone to open their mics and get comfortable talking to us via Zoom here. So looking for a second on the meeting minutes, please.
Yeah, Mike Boland.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you. Sorry, your mic sounds a little low. If you wouldn't mind turning it up, but I think I heard you say you approved it too.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So we can move to item number 3 for public comments. Are there any public comments or member comments? If so, please unmute yourself, or if you would like to raise your hand. All right, I don't see anyone, and if others can help me just to double check. I don't see anyone.
Yeah, double checking here, Carrie. I don't see any hands raised.
All right, well, let's move really quick then to number 4. So as you've probably heard, our region was just awarded funds from the Senate Bill 1 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program from the California Transportation Commission. So the San Diego border corridor was for San Diego and Imperial counties, and we're very happy to have received $179 million for 4 freight projects in our region. So very, very quickly, those projects are the Losan Corridor, which was a suite of 5 freight projects, the Otay Mesa East project, the City of San Diego's La Media project, and Imperial County Transportation Commission's Calexico East Bridge Widening project. So just wanted to say thank you to everyone that helped us with those awards, and we'll be implementing those projects soon. So with that, I would like to quickly move to item number 5. I wanted to introduce Allison Woodworth. She is with our planning team at Sandag, and she will be doing a presentation on the South Bay to Sorrento comprehensive multimodal corridor program. With that, thank you, Allison. And the nice thing about this presentation is there are parallels to the item number 6 that we won't skip forward to yet, but I'm really happy that Allison can be here and present on this really important corridor plan. So with that, Allison, if you wouldn't mind presenting.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear and see everything all right. My name is Allison, and thank you for inviting me here today to talk about South Bay to Sorrento's comprehensive multimodal corridor plan. I'm currently a transit planner at Sandag and the deputy project manager on this project under Jennifer Williamson. So I just really quickly wanted to go over what a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan is. I know that several of you have already attended the freight focus group that we had earlier. I think it was in January. So I'll try and speed through some of this and not bore y'all to death. But just in case anyone needed a bit of a refresher. On September 27, 2019, the Sandag Board of Directors allocated $40 million over 5 years to complete CMCPs for 12 corridors throughout the region. CMCPs are meant to inform decision makers by providing a blueprint for an integrated transportation system by working with stakeholders and incorporating local, state, and federal policy considerations. CMCPs are required by the California Transportation Commission, the CTC, to be competitive for local, state, and federal funding. So we're developing consensus on priority transportation solutions through these CMCPs, which is a very significant and valuable factor when competing for scarce transportation funds. There are currently 5 CMCPs underway in the region, and these include the North County Regional Study, shown in the yellow, which looks like a little bit of a shoe, the San Vicente Corridor in the orange, the Coast Canyons and Trails, which is in the green, and the Central Mobility Hub and Connections, which is that little blue kite. And then there's our study area, which is shown in the purple. And in a second, I'll show you how we're going to break down that study area to understand it better. But as you can see, there's a lot of overlap between the CMCPs, and just want to assure you that we are coordinating closely with those other studies to ensure consistency in the projects and programs that are developed. In addition to the CMCPs that are shown, we're also coordinating closely with other parallel studies that touch our corridor, and I'll go over a couple of those at the end in relation to goods movement and the border. We currently have a project team defined for our project study area made up of Sandag, Caltrans, City of San Diego, Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, Coronado, and military stakeholders. And additionally, our project team is supported by over 50 subject matter experts, some of whom are here today from across the region to provide input on these areas that they have the most experience. So as I touched on previously, these CMCPs are holistic implementation efforts. Historically improvements were made often in a more siloed approach. For example, just looking at the freeway or just looking at a transit connection, these CMCPs are underscored by their multimodal approach. And there's many examples of how the existing transportation network can be improved with advanced technology and new or improved services. So for example, in technology, you've heard of smart infrastructure, smart corridors, smart mobility, smart borders, and complete corridors. There's managed lanes, connected vehicles, and I think particularly relevant to this group is the curb management, which is critical for efficiently, safely, and fairly managing demand for a scarce public right-of-way. So just quickly about our study area itself, this map that I'm showing right now is based on census tract, so it looks slightly different than our conceptual map previously. The study area extends over 31 miles and includes a significant portion of the region's jobs and housing. And it also includes several major roadways, including all of Interstate 805, a portion of I-5 between the border and downtown, all of State Route 905, and portions of State Route 52 and 54. The study area is also home to the Blue Line trolley and portions of the Orange and Green lines. The study area includes several important military facilities and the international border, all of which drive a lot of traffic through the study area, in addition to those trips that are generated within the study area itself. So in addition to analyzing all of the travel needs within the corridor, we're also looking at areas of influence, which are those areas that are immediately adjacent to the study area that generate a lot of travel into or out of our study area. For example, those areas of influence could include Mira Mesa, University City, and downtown San Diego. So this map is our census tracts broken up into sub areas. And these are used so that we can perform more detailed analysis on travel patterns within those areas and better understand the demographic and socioeconomic data and the specific travel needs of those areas. So as you can see, we have about 7 sub areas here. And we'll go to the next. Next, I'll talk about corridor characteristics. So our study area includes just over 1/5 of the population of the region, 20% of the housing, and close to 30% of the jobs. And in a second, I'll show you where the jobs are and where the people are living, so you can see why it's important to understand this as it drives a lot of the travel within the region. So here's what I was talking about previously. So the South Bay to Sorrento study area includes 30% of the jobs and, as I said previously, much of the population. So when we look at the maps, it helps to illustrate that the amount of travel has to happen to allow people to live within the study area and get to the major employment centers. So you see those yellow arrows there indicate that the density and the employment centers are there in the center of the study area. When we look at the concentrations of the population, so in the darkest purple, so I think should be on your left side, you'll see that they're clearly in the center of the region. And this means that a lot of people who live within the study area are having to travel along major corridors to get to their employment sites. And that's not the end of the story, because our study area is home to 2 major employment centers. There's a lot of travel through the study area from people who live outside of it. And that means that we have to think about travel, not only within the corridor, but also those trips to travel through the corridor, which is what I was talking about, those areas of influence. Here, I would like to note that although we don't show it on this slide, we recognize the density and growth on the Mexican side of the border and the impact that does and will have on the travel of people and goods throughout this corridor. We're coordinating with parallel studies, such as the Border Master Plan update, and engaging stakeholders such as yourselves to ensure that we're developing solutions that appreciate that binational context that drives unique opportunities within our corridor. So on this side, you'll see the major regional existing transit network. And within our study area, we have multiple trolley lines, several rapid routes, and a passenger rail corridor. And there's also about 30 local bus routes that travel within or through our study area. This slide illustrates the active transportation paths within the study area, and I think it's a good example of how context matters. So while it appears here that there are a substantial number of pathways at all levels, what we see when we take a closer look is that there are a number of gaps in the network, which I'll show you in a second. This is especially prevalent in the areas of east of the I-8. Access to Kearney Mesa and Sereno Valley employment areas are limited. There's also a substantial number of Class 3 bikeways, and it's those green lines. Blanketing the belly of the beast was what I like to call it there in the Chula Vista National City areas. But the Class 3 bikeways are, contrary to the numbering system, the least protected or separated version of a bikeway. They're what's known as bike routes and are streets painted with sharrows, which are lanes fully shared with cars. This is perhaps not a comfortable or feasible option for many potential cyclists in those communities. Similarly, it's important that we understand the realities and goals for freight stakeholders to inform our development of transportation solutions. This is just the example of how there are gaps in the network if you zoom into that map. So as I indicated before, our study area includes several major freeways, and this map sort of helps to illustrate that and the congestion points along the corridor. The area has 3 of the top 10 of the most congested areas and 10 of the top 50 most congested areas overall. Anyone that has had to travel along I-805 during peak periods is well aware of this. And areas with the highest levels of congestion occur in the middle of the corridor between SR 94 and I-8. There are also significant periods of congestion at SR 52 and I-805 interchange and along I-5 through the downtown area. In addition, the blue dots on this map indicate primary goods movement activity points from Miramar and Kearney Mesa warehouses to the port of entries. And as you can see, we have, as you've likely experienced, freight gateways and their fleets are impacted by these pinch points. So just quickly, some challenges and opportunities. So as I mentioned previously, we did meet with some freight stakeholders earlier in the month. And some of the things that we heard there about the challenges are border wait times, lack of truck parking, and that zero emission vehicle trends are not yet feasible for freight in a lot of cases. There are other challenges that we're considering in this corridor, of course, related to environmental challenges, land use challenges for communities of concern, which is super important for social equity, as well as mobility challenges like connections, gaps in the connectivity, like I was saying, in the active transportation network. And of course, we have opportunities as well. So example, again, in that freight stakeholder group, we heard that we should work with the private sector to ensure that zero emission vehicle infrastructure is aligned with your freight and truck routes and needs. The CMCP team is developing strategies and projects that will facilitate the movement of people and goods in this corridor and will benefit these freight gateways, and looks forward to presenting this initial project list in a future meeting. So it's currently in development. And finally, as I said a little bit earlier, there's a lot going on in the region, and we're continuing to need your input. Here's an example of the many goods movement studies that are currently underway. And we're looking to explore many of the projects in the corridor that will be implemented alongside other modes as we develop the CMCP. Essentially, the result of the CMCP is that we'll use this information to develop a suite of transportation projects and strategies, and your input will help craft the blueprint for this corridor. So with that in mind, I'm going to go over quickly the schedule and how you can get elbow deep in providing us your questions, comments, ideas, and other feedback. So here's a quick schedule. We're currently in the information gathering stage. And in fact, last Thursday on the 28th, we had our first public meeting. We'll quickly be moving into developing our alternatives. And once that's complete, we will hold a second public meeting to review the different project alternatives and gather input. And after that, we'll go into a rigorous phase of measuring the projects based on a wide range of criteria. And in the fall, we'll be bringing back how the alternatives performed in our top performing alternatives for stakeholder input. And I will give you information on how you can view the public meeting video if you didn't have a chance to attend. So one of the best ways to learn more about our CMCP and get your head, shoulders, knees, and toes, as I like to say, into the thick of things is to visit our virtual engagement hub. And here's the direct link. And I think that Carrie and Ricky were going to send these slides out as well with that link. You can also find the link by visiting sandag.org/CMCP. And at this virtual engagement hub, you can find recordings of the public meetings, you can complete surveys, leave comments, view our fact sheet, and provide input through our interactive map. And in our final slide, I'll provide you even more information to get in touch with us. Just really quickly, this is an example of the interactive map that I was talking about that's on our social engagement hub. There's a specific way that you can drop goods movement concerns, issues, opportunities in the map itself. And this, so as you can see here, some people have done that. If there are points of interest that are outside of the study area, you can drop your icon as near as possible to where that is and then leave indicate specifics in your comment. And then generic or any other comments can also be left in the comment form on the main page of the social pimp or of our virtual engagement hub. And then the direct link to this map, but you can of course get there from the main page, is also on this slide here. And then finally, this is all the different ways that you can connect with us, from 6 ways to Sunday, as I like to say. So we have both a call and a text hotline, which we recently just added, a CMCP email address, as well as the virtual engagement hub that I mentioned earlier. And again, the link is right here. So with that in mind, thank you so much for inviting me today, and have a great week.
Thank you so much, Allison, for that presentation. Does anyone have questions for Allison? If so, feel free to unmute yourself. I believe most of you can do that. Or feel free to drop in any questions in the chat too.
Yeah, Carrie, just echoing, thanking Allison for presenting the South Beta Sorrento summation of the project, and so many ways to get involved. I'm not seeing any hands raised with questions. That doesn't mean that we are not going to take comments after these few minutes pass by. Allison will make sure to get your presentation out to the Freight Stakeholder Working Group members here.
All right, with that, thank you again, Allison. I think we can move to the next item. And as Elizabeth mentioned, if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. So our next item, I know we're going to spend a lot of time on this item, is the 2021 Freight Gateway Study Update. So let me share my screen really quick so you can see the PowerPoint. So today we're going to do a quick presentation, and I'm here today with our consultant team. That's Jolene Hayes from Fair & Pierce, Elizabeth Hannon from Suture Research, and also Ty Manzo from Suture Research. And we're going to be presenting the Gateway Study, and then we're going to be doing an exercise, and that will be a little bit close to an hour, I'd say, for the entirety of it. So that's also why we asked for you all to be able to unmute yourselves, because we'll be asking for some engagement in that workshop. So with that, we can begin the PowerPoint. So today we just really quickly wanted to give us the overview of the study, go over the schedule, touch on the engagement portions of the study, and then looking for basically any changes of freight. There's going to be that activity with Mural that I mentioned earlier that we'll spend a lot of time on. And then we'll go over the next steps and how we're going to engage this working group in the future. So really quick, wanted to provide the region that we're covering in this Freight Gateway study. So as you can see on this map, we're going to be including San Diego and Imperial counties. And I know most of you know what a Freight Gateway is, but for those of you who might not be familiar, We're going to be looking at facilities where a large amount of goods are moving in our transportation network. So as you can see here on this map, we're going to be including assets such as major roadways, borderland ports of entry, freight rail lines, including the Class 1 and short line rail, airports that handle air cargo, pipelines, and warehouse facilities. So to give a quick overview of the study, this will be a refresh of two previous freight gateway studies that were done in 2010 and 2016. And this study is important because it will be an appendix to the 2021 regional plan. So the intent of the study is to really understand how freight demand is moving on a supply chain perspective. So we're assessing how freight tonnage enters and leaves our gateway region. So we'll be looking at how goods are moving to and from our border counties, states, and international partners. And then we'll also be assessing how goods move within our region too. And just a quick note, we'll be looking at 2019 as our base year for all the numbers that we'll be analyzing. And we'll be doing a forecast and looking at the 2035 and 2050 as our horizon years to be consistent with the 2021 regional plan. As you can see here, we're also going to be looking at some freight trends. So as you can see, we're going to be looking at fleet conversion to zero and near zero emission vehicles, impacts of international trade policies, and then also first and last mile demand for from e-commerce. And as you saw in the last presentation from Allison, we're coordinating closely with the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans, but we also want to mention the other plans that are happening in the region and in the state that we'll be coordinating with too. So I know this looks like a lot of plans. There are a lot. Anyway, a lot of the data that we'll be collecting from the study will also help future planning efforts as well. And Dave, I could see that you have your hand raised. Did you want to ask a quick question?
Yeah, hi Carrie. I just saw with the trend, was there, good morning everybody, and good morning. Was there a reason maybe information technology or new technology wasn't included? Because I know that's a recent trend. Maybe it just didn't hit the top three, maybe it's number 4, but just wanted to ask the question.
No, that's a good question, Dave. Yeah, we'll also be looking at that too. But yes, these were items, I guess, that are newer or have been evolving, I guess, since the 2016 study. So the 2016 study also touched on technologies. So, but good catch. Yes, we'll be including those too. And I guess I should probably add that to our assets slide because I think that's a good call. And with that, let me transition over to our consultants to give a quick update.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jolene Hayes with Ferrum Peers, and I'm leading this project for the team. I'm supported by a really strong group of people that have both great experience in the region, such as Sutra, who's leading the outreach, and also really helps with that coordination with the other studies that were mentioned. We're also supported by Tioga Group, who has a lot of experience on the rail and seaport side. Texas Transportation Institute, so Juan Carlos Villa, who's been heavily involved in what's happening with the cross-border trade flows, and he actually lives in Mexico City, so he brings us some really good experience from that piece of it. And then IHS Markit, and this is really important for us coordinating with the Otay Mesa project. So the Otay Mesa data will be the same data that we're using for that crossing, but we're also bringing in that similar level of data for the other crossings, including the ones in Imperial County. So there will be a similar story told across the border as to what's been changing over the last 5 years. Next slide. So the project schedule, we just kicked this off in November. And right now we're just waiting for the data. That's been the biggest piece, but we've been looking through and seeing what needs to be updated, but also paying attention to those trends that Carrie mentioned. And Dave, that was a really good catch. And it's something that the technology side is coupled somewhat with the zero emission technologies. We're also looking at automation and information sharing as part of that task. So that is one of the other trends that we'll be looking at, especially as it relates to workforce development, because we know that there's a significant skill gap in that piece of what's moving and what's been changing in the industry. But for the purpose of the 3 trends we're looking at, we were really looking at the impact that those trends have on freight flows. So the zero emission has some significant implications, especially when you start looking at cross-border trade and investments in the new technologies. And then the other 2 that Carrie mentioned, all of those will be looked at. And this is the way that the schedule lays out. We're trying to make sure we have enough information to pull into the RTP. So we should have some first pieces of this, and this is when we'll come back to you with what we know as far as existing conditions, what has changed, and we'll have some forecast information to help inform the RTP. But that's when we'll come back to you as March. So that's those diamonds that you see on the screen. That's what Elizabeth and Ty will be leading. So I'll let Elizabeth talk a little bit more about the outreach piece and when we'll come back to you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jolene. We'll go back to that slide for just a sec, Carrie. That's okay. Thank you so much. And yeah, so for everyone on the call, your engagement with us is crucial to this freight stakeholder or Freight Gateway study update. You are serving as kind of our technical advisory group. In just a little bit, we're going to really encourage you to open microphones. We're going to give you some tools so that you can write out some of your thoughts, but we really need to engage with you. And we're not quite at a year of having the COVID-19 pandemic at our doorstep here, but we're becoming more comfortable with interacting by Zoom. So today, when Carrie and I ask for your input on some things, hopefully you're in a good mood to open up your microphone and chat with us. So Jolene, there are a couple spots where we're going to come back to the freight stakeholder working group. And that's why I asked Carrie to kind of hold on this slide for a moment. As you said, we're going to come back in March, and that's going to be the time where those freight forecasts we'll have that data and some of our analysis and some of our trends work. And we'll be coming back to this freight stakeholder working group for an interactive activity, around those results. So we really need you to kind of be our eyes and ears on the pulse of what's changed since 2016 with our last Freight Gateway study update and helping us plan for the current trends. So you can see on the slide that Carrie's showing that we have March coming back to the freight working group, then again in July back to the freight working group with taking a look at where are those modal shifts occurring, what policy and how is our data analysis, what policies are we considering recommending, and how is our data analysis turning out. And then lastly, as we get ready to, wrap up the project, we would come back to this working group with our summary and recommendations, and really, again, looking for feedback. I would love to guess, Carrie, that by late summer, perhaps we could be elbow to elbow in a room, but I think most of this is going to be online still, and that's the way we're planning it for now. So should we all get vaccinated and things clean up, perhaps we can get together in a room, but for now we'll be in this Zoom environment. So with that, do you want to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the key scope elements, Jolene?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Just these are the 6 big bullet points, but the first couple of bullets on the screen are really focused on the existing conditions. So we're going to be refreshing the 2016 Gateway study. So it's really just updating the narrative, making sure that we're paying attention to what has changed over the last 5 years. The next piece of it is that freight data analysis. So once we understand what the forecast looks like, what the existing conditions look like, then we can start analyzing the conditions on the corridors and understand what's changed. And part of what we're thinking may have changed, for example, was with the tariffs and there being more north-south cross-border trade that's happening than perhaps through the seaports. But COVID has really thrown things out. So we will be pulling 2019 data, which is pre-COVID, to get a better understanding of what was really going on before COVID. We're not sure how much of the activity that we're seeing now, like with e-commerce, how much of that will stick. So we'll look at it, but we're not going to base any of the forecast on what's going on right now. We'll also be looking at the other policy and modal shift issues So the zero emission, like I mentioned, we'll look at more of the e-commerce activity. We do think a lot of the e-commerce will stay. And then also looking at just a full refresh on the policies and what needs to go into the RTP. So I think the next slide, Carrie, is this when we flip to the mural? Or yeah, these are the
Yeah.
big discussion points for mural. So we're going to pull up what's basically an interactive whiteboard. So anybody that wants, I'm going to put actually, let me put this in the chat so that anybody who wants to have access to the actual mural board can write their own comments in. It's basically like a whiteboard, and it's fairly easy to work. If you pull up the link that I just put in the chat box, you'll have access to be able to, and let me share my screen real quick so I can show you what it looks like. So this is what you'll come to. So what we're going to do is take each of those 4 questions that were on the previous PowerPoint slide, and we're going to zoom into them, and we're going to talk about them. So you have an option. If you don't want to verbalize what you want to say, you can just click on one of these sticky notes and just type whatever you want, type. And then your notes are on the screen. Or you can just verbally talk about what you think are issues related to these different questions, and we can type them in here for you. But this will be an interactive record that we will be able to keep and maintain and come back to as we come back to you each time. So the first one that we wanted to talk about is the truck parking and land use issues. So we know that there are quite a few things that have changed over the last 5 years. We know that truck parking has only been exacerbated by the increase in e-commerce and just the freight delivery that we're seeing today. And we also know that there's some land use differences that are happening. There's been much more demand for industrial development, less demand for office and retail development. So these are some of the things that we were thinking about as far as bullets under this, but this is just to get you thinking. This is not a limited list. So if something else comes up that you're thinking, please feel free to add that to this list. But the 3 that I put up here were shortages of truck parking. And can everybody see this okay? Is that big enough?
It's big enough, yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So shortages of truck parking and the growing need for safe, authorized truck parking, impacts of truck parking in communities with industrial land uses and shifting demand and rezoning from office to retail. Actually, I was supposed to let Ty do this one, so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to.
No,
That's fine.
keep
You're
going.
doing a great job, Jolene. I'll just jump in as needed here.
Yeah, and so Ty, let's keep in mind what thoughts you may want to add. Jolene, I'm just going to ask the folks on the call if you're able to. We're encouraging you to follow the link that's been dropped into chat, and that'll take you over to the mural board. And I can see that Stephen and a couple other folks have signed into the mural board, and we're asking for all of you to do that. If you can follow that link, log into the mural board. And now this will give you an opportunity to go ahead and organize your thoughts. So Ty, Jolene helped us frame this a little bit around truck parking and land use, talking about some of the bullet points here. In terms of the Freight Gateway study, you know, with our experts that we have on the call, what kind of questions do you have so that we can learn more about their insights for truck parking and land use?
So just to kind of, I guess, pile on with what everyone else has already said, I know that the border area has its own, you know, particular truck parking and land use challenges. And I know Alejandra has been deep in the middle, you know, of some of those conversations around that. And so Alejandra, I might put you on the spot here. You know, to talk a little bit more specifically about, you know, the OTI landscape and what we think that, you know, maybe the primary issue more specifically down there, and, you know, something that we might put in our mural board here.
Sure, absolutely. And we may need help from one of our actual truckers. I mean, we definitely have a huge demand of truck parking in Otay Mesa because we basically see the trucks parked all around of our community. Now, and that obviously depends on if the truck was able to, where the truck is housed, and if they were able to I guess cross back home, if you want to call it that. Usually the medium-sized truckers have facilities on both sides of the border, but I think I'm not sure if I'm the best person to actually articulate the actual cause of why they're parking. We may need help from a trucking company. Is my
Right.
Yeah, and
that's good. That's a good thought. And I guess the other piece of that is, are there, can we talk a little bit about specific, arterials, maybe in the Otay area? I've got some ideas, but we would like to hear from you, if you've got some specific, and I'm just going to throw some names out there like Siempre Viva or, some other area or street that we should probably pay attention to, and that, may be a place where we can, specifically throw some attention.
Go ahead.
No,
Alejandra.
I'm not sure when you mention the arterials, they would, for what reason? For truck parking? I mean, I know we're talking.
Where we are seeing, some, for maybe businesses saying, hey, there's too many trucks parking on my street, or we're having trouble getting through because they're lined up here, or, are there other places besides the usual suspects, that we should, consider or pay attention to?
Okay, no, I'm just thinking, I mean, trucks, to my knowledge, are parked throughout Otay Mesa, not in any particular area. I know, for example, I mean, obviously where I go most, and certainly not now because we're working remotely, is Airway Road in front of Southwestern College. And I can tell you, for example, Southwestern College is even changing their parking, I guess, permits. So trucks will have to be parked diagonal just to avoid trucks from parking there, because there's some issues with trucks parking on streets, creating like from trash to other issues. So we see it all over Otay Mesa, actually, for now. I mean, just sort of without doing an analysis.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so it's pretty well distributed. Well, thanks for that, Alejandra. And, I guess it probably would be a good idea for us to talk to, folks that are actually doing the trucking. The medium-sized trucks, like you said, I think are the least worry, because they do have a home base on either side of the border, generally. But, it's the regional and long-haul trucks that we probably need to talk to more specifically about the parking.
Hello.
So, David or Alan, yes.
Yeah,
hi.
I'll chime in. Thanks, Alejandra. Hi, this is Alan Villa with Grupo Logistics. We have an office here in Otay Mesa as well as Calexico. Our primary,
Oops. Alan, if you can hear me, you accidentally muted yourself. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No
So
worries.
we manage a lot of transportation on both sides of the border, on the West Coast, all the way up from Washington down to Mexico City and Guadalajara, crossing to Tijuana and Mexicali. One thing to expand on, Alejandra, with this region, what's happening is a lot of carrier interchanging agreements. So a lot of the U.S. carriers are signing contracts with Mexican carriers to haul their equipment, as in trailers, to the other side, where Tijuana or Mexicali or farther to the interior. So that's one of the opportunities, or that's one of the reasons that we see a lot of volume at the border, as well as the intermodal aspect from San Bernardino down, the Port of Long Beach, drayage down to the Maquilas on the border. So you're always going to have that U.S. carrier base delivering to the border in order to get it across. So that's the opportunity on the volumes of has it increased here in this area. The second thing I think is all types of merchandise. Now it's a lot of refrigeration cargo through Tijuana, through OTAI, as well as Mexicali, Calexico. So that's a demand for refrigeration parking, where you have to monitor the diesel. Flatbeds, a lot of flatbed use, a lot of tanker use that deliver, across the border. So again, they need parking to do the interchanges for the equipment to shuttle, to dray across into Mexico. And then the dry trailers as non-refrigerated trailers that always are, especially on the television side and electronic side in Tijuana. You need a pool of trailers of demand to manage the demand for the amount of TVs or electronic goods. You need extra trailers to manage that volume. So that's what we see at the border. We're constantly looking for ourselves as a bigger trailer yard to park our own private fleet. We have about 90 trucks here in OTAI that we manage from US to Mexico, as well as our partners, where we could have another 110 trailers, for partners with the US carriers. So it's a growing, and we're just a mid-sized company. So it's definitely an international hub here. As you see in OTAI, the development of more warehouses here as the Amazon Fulfillment Center comes alive. A lot of inventory is going to be stored here in OTAI, and it's going to be a demand for more trucks and more parking. So from a transportation side and from a 3PL side, it's kind of like a high level of what we see here in OTAI, as well as is in Calexico, which is also going to be booming in Imperial Valley there.
So quick question for you, Alan. Just wondering, is there a lot of queuing, at least from your perspective in your trucks, for like transloading or cross dock facilities?
Yes, exactly. Sorry.
Okay.
And that goes hand in hand with cross docking facilities that you have to do transloads. And you have to coordinate that with everything, with your Mexican custom broker, U.S. custom broker, and the hours operations of customs. So that's all in consideration. Today's a Mexican holiday, so customs is open from 9 to 2. All that you have to take in considerations. A lot of our bottlenecks are on Friday. Everybody's trying to get across on Friday. Monday's busy because all the East Coast shipments arrive from the East Coast to the West Coast. From Friday, they arrive and they're on Monday. So, but yeah, that's a great topic, is the lot of transloading, a lot of cross-docking here that's done that creates bottlenecks, as well as Alejandra, she spoke on Airway Road is, I have clients that park there and wait for appointments to come deliver to me. So that is one of the major volume, say, bottlenecks is that transloading process.
Thanks so much for that, Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Ty and Alan. I was just chiming in there. And Ty, this is Elizabeth, and I just wanted to let the group know that the idea was to spend about 15 or so minutes on each of these subjects, and which is great. We've had a good amount of time here. We want to spend a few more minutes, though, Ty, and I want to see if we can call out. Port? Yeah, I was just going to ask if Stephen or our Port Tenants Association rep, if you might chat with us a little bit about truck parking and land use issues at the port.
Yeah, particularly, I'm very interested in any thoughts regarding National City, although I know 10th Avenue has its issues as well, but yes. Very much so in National City.
So when you deal with truck parking, if you could make it so the Amazon guy doesn't come right when I'm about to speak.
Yeah,
of course.
We'll time that better next time, Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're working on a balance plan, right, for National City, and that will affect how the cargo flow in the terminal, and it will affect truck parking somewhat. We did in our multimodal corridor study, work with National City. They'd like to have some truck parking near the terminal, near one of our gas stations there. It's the only gas station there. But honestly, you know, we, because our volumes aren't, you know, I would say we don't have much of a truck parking problem there. I think that the challenge we see is moving forward, this need for electric zero emissions vehicles, and how do we accommodate them, and how do we bring them in for kind of the first last mile moves around Barrio Logan and National City. Right
Okay,
now,
hold that thought.
yeah, I see it's the fourth one, Darlene. But that's, I mean, we really don't have truck parking near the terminals, really don't, because we're the end of the line, haven't really wanted to have a lot of truck parking near the terminals. There's nothing really near the terminals for people to go through if they park their trucks there. But definitely want to work with the region on identifying sites, whether it's an Otay or maybe some smaller sites near the terminal. I don't know if that's helpful.
It's all helpful.
Within 10th Avenue Marine Terminal, our main source of truck trips is Dole Fresh Fruit. And because they're fully vertically integrated, most of the trucks coming in are coming in with an empty container and they leave with a full container. So we don't have a lot of trucks deadheading in. So they, you know, they really are coming in from where the containers are already being stored. About 10% stay local and the rest go to kind of go north. But again, they're not really parking by us. They just get in and get out, usually within about 20 to 30 minutes.
Stephen, thanks for chiming in there. I was going to ask if Corshell has something to add from Port Tenants Association, or I know our rep we have someone from National City, and then we'll kind of wrap up here unless anyone else has some comments, raise your hand or open your mic. But Corshell or National City, any comments to add regarding truck parking in your area?
I don't. I'm not sure if Sharon has anything to add as well. She's on the call.
Thank you. Thanks, Corshell. And so Sharon, yes, I don't know if you have anything to add. If not, or if National City folks, anybody from Caltrans too. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the other things I wanted to ask the folks about was, you know, there was a comment, you know, from Stephen that the volumes aren't, you know, high enough to really worry too much about truck parking in National City, but does that comment also encompass National Distribution Center?
And I should probably clarify that. We definitely have volumes. I don't mean to say we don't have volumes. I guess what I'm getting at is I think we have, at NDC, we have some parking there. Maybe they need more, but I think we have some. And really the goal, I think we don't know where all the trucks are coming from when they park near the port. And depending on who you would talk to, you would get a different answer for whether those are port trucks serving the port or trucks that are operating in the region. And I think lots of people have different perspectives on that. I can't speak authoritatively about that, but that's where we're working with National City on kind of a stretch of street parking for the trucks that would be paid near one of our gas stations. Is thought that we could accommodate some of those trucks.
So the Pepper Oil folks?
Yeah, and that's still definitely an early, right? National City has the right to designate street parking in National City. And so if they want to do that near Pepper Oil, that's something they can do. And the port will always work with them on that, you know.
Okay. Sounds like we need to dive deeper in this conversation later on.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's chat with Stephen a little bit more about that, tie offline. So let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit here. Thanks, Jolene. I see you moving the mural around. And for those of you that didn't have an opportunity, you can still follow the chat or the link in the chat box and join us over here on Mural. It's pretty awesome to watch those populate. So hopefully you're able to kind of see that happening. And let's shift gears again, not closing out the conversation around truck parking and land use, but inviting us to take a look at some freight flows and logistics development here. You know, Jolene, this is where we were, wanting to hear from our stakeholders on the call, really about what's changed in the last 5 years, because we're doing an update to our 2016 study, and some of the questions that we were wanting to ask is, where have the most significant changes in growth and logistics development occurred? What's the future outlook for freight and industrial investment in the region? How has the chassis shortage, how is it or has it been impacting folks? So one thing as we shift into this question, Jolene, that I want to ask is that if you're on the call and you don't have an answer to this necessarily, and thank you for whomever's jumping in, that's wonderful. But if you don't have an answer, one way that you could really help the team out here is to provide a recommendation to who we can talk to. So perhaps we don't have the right folks on the call today to talk about the chassis shortage. If you have an input on that, we'd love to hear it. But if you say, why don't you talk to, Tim at such and such a company, that would really benefit the group as well. So we can follow up and get some of those insights. Jolene, anything to add to help frame this question?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I know, Alan, you mentioned the increased demand on reefers, for example. So that would be anything that has to do like with equipment shortages or trends that we've seen. The other piece of it is, have you noticed an impact from the tariffs and how you're moving things, where it's coming from, going to, or has COVID been more significant? Just what you've seen over the last 5 years that's shifted not only land use patterns, but maybe how you're moving stuff and where you're moving it.
I think one of the things that shifted is the demand for warehousing down there, 3PL warehousing down here in Otay. And a lot of that had to do with well, to ask a question on the import duties, everybody was trying to get the containers into the United States and warehouse them before they went into effect. So that impacted all Southern California. And really, we had a lot of opportunities here as a region to offer those services. So that was a demand on that was effect from the import duties. The increased, well, the demand for equipment also, lack of demand, the freight rates went higher, and it was just supply demand issue. That was a extremely impact on delays on moving products. I think the trade balance also, it seems like the last 5 years, the trade balance was, 50%, 50% is southbound and northbound from United States and Mexico, but it's more or less shifted now to almost like 40% going from the United States to Mexico and 60% coming up from Mexico to the United States. And so that trade balance impacted the equipment availability also, and it increased the demand for the warehousing.
Just to make sure I have that clear. So it went from being about a 50-50 split to now with the new regulations, it forced it to more of a 40-60 split?
Yeah, and a lot of it had to do with nearshoring. A lot of manufacturers moved back from Asia to North America, especially Mexico, and some of the clusters that we see here in the region. So it kind of put that trade balance as more coming northbound from Mexico to the United States.
We're wondering how our data is going to tell that story, and that's something that we'll be ground truthing with you when we come back to see how it tells that story. We're really hoping to see that effect in it.
And of course, e-commerce is booming now the last 2 years, say year and a half, and it'll continue to be an impact here. I know that's another bullet point, but demand for warehousing for e-commerce items for the United States, Mexico, and Canada will continue to be a demand here, opportunity on our region on providing that service for e-commerce on the supply chain side. Answer your question.
Alan, they're wonderful insights. Thank you so much for opening your mic and sharing with us. Jolene, did you have a follow-up for him?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the industry might be thinking as far as e-commerce, and is it going to stay at this level, or do you think it'll go down a little bit? You think it's going to stay the same?
It'll go up. It'll increase. There's a lot of new platforms on e-commerce that want to put inventory on the border, including companies, from Asia that want to put inventory on the border to service the U.S. market, Canada and Mexico. A lot of the new platforms that are opening in Mexico want to service United States, as in offer products from Mexico to sell in the United States. The import requirements for e-commerce have changed and really become a lot easier for foreign countries to sell e-commerce to the United States. So.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks again, Alan. It's a wonderful input. I wanted to see if I can ask some folks. I know we have some friends from Caltrans on the call. I also see some Sandag folks. Peter, hello, good to kind of see you again. But Caltrans, if Rob, good to see you as always on the call, Rob Owen from Caltrans. Any insights that you all have, regarding this this subject of freight flows and logistics, we'd love to hear from you. If you don't feel comfortable opening your microphone and sharing with us, you can of course go to the mural board following the link in chat. Anyone else want to comment here on freight flows and logistics?
To piggyback on what you were just saying, Elizabeth, I'm hoping too, if we could also get maybe from the air perspective or seaport as well. And even I see a few maybe from Imperial County.
I saw.
Yeah,
Thanks, Carrie.
ag. Yeah,
great. The ag holders and ICTC, if you have anything. I see Marlene's on the call. And I do see Barbie and Rob from Caltrans with their pens in the mural board. So, welcoming anyone that I've called out or that I haven't called out to go ahead and chat with us here.
This is Alejandra again. I'm sorry, I just want to comment just a little bit of piggybacking on what Alan said. I also think that e-commerce is here to stay or increasing. But also, I just want to point out the nearshoring as well. I mean, we're already seeing that. For example, Poly Plantronics, one of our largest manufacturers in Tijuana, already announced an expansion of, I guess they're generating 1,500 new jobs through their expansion. And basically what they're doing is they're moving their production lines from Asia to Tijuana. So, I mean, we're actually seeing it happen in our region.
Thank you so much for adding that in, Alejandra. Always appreciate your comments. And I do see, a number of notes here. I'm just kind of reviewing them. If you are looking over the notes yourself and have anything that you want to add, this growing emphasis on environmental justice in the supply chains, e-commerce impacts, as Alejandra and Alan were kind of talking about, seeing that expected to increase. If anybody has any, insights into these subjects, we're happy to hear from you.
So one thing the port is saying, definitely the rail.
Yeah,
is something we're having to watch. I mean, Sandag is taking the lead really in ensuring that we maintain our regional rail network by getting those BNSF lines kind of north of us secured right near the bluffs. And that's super important. We also see cross-border traffic. We have vehicles that cross the border to come use our rail ladder with trucks. So we get about 100 trucks a day with about 700. I mean, there's 700 trucks that go on the rail, right? But 100 freight trucks per day crossing the border, coming to us to use that rail ladder, which, I mean, it's not the majority of the cargo in that terminal, but it's a lot of cargo.
So, Stephen, is it this export then, or is it import?
It's import land bridge. So it's going towards, I mean, the Midwest, probably, I don't know.
Okay.
And I think one thing too, Stephen, is like I'm speaking with the Port of San Diego, is you now have an FTZ, your whole port, the port is an FTZ. And I think that opportunity is going to happen in Otay Mesa as far as more and more companies are going to look for FTZ warehousing or FTZ move transfers from other FTZs in this area. That's going to open up more cargo volume.
Thank you, Alan. Because I look at our financials and that's backwards looking, and I think the FTZ's opened in the last 2 months. So we haven't seen a lot moving through there yet, but that's definitely something we're hoping will take off. and that's in the border region.
Yeah, Stephen, and I was just thinking about that border region. I know, Zach, you're on the call and some other border folks. Any comments that we can add in this subject with activity down by the border? So the unfortunate thing of me knowing some folks on the call and calling them out is they can say, I don't want to listen to you, Elizabeth. But Zach or Peter, anyone from Caltrans, we're super happy to have you on the call and want to do some insights. I think unless someone has another thought that I can prompt out of you or that's burning for you to share, Jolene, let's go ahead and move to our third section.
Elizabeth, can I just mention?
Please.
Alejandra, I forget what the number is. Maybe Alan remembers, but there was a change just like, I want to say a year ago, where the de minimis value changed significantly. And this basically is huge for e-commerce. So it's a regulation from CBP where products, I guess it was, I want to say, I'm forgetting the numbers, but I think it went up to like $600 or $800.
Right. It went up to $800. So that means that e-commerce shipment could be $800 or less, and then wouldn't be subject to import duties or custom broker or taxes. I'm sorry, import duties or taxes. And so that's where you're going to see a lot of e-commerce companies coming here at the border to put their inventory exactly to take advantage of that change. And I'm not sure if that was a result of the USMCA. I'm not sure, but that's something that is now driving the demand here at the border.
Right. So this was a regulation change. I think it was like over a year ago that it started. And it's huge because basically if there's an import, let's just say from Tijuana to San Diego, as long as it's less than $800, it goes to a specific entity, then they don't pay duties at all, even if it's a product from China, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it impacted e-commerce significantly. Just because it's something that drastically changed. It's sort of, you can analyze that.
It's wonderful. Thank you for adding that in. Jolene, were you going to add something?
No, I'm just, that's great. I mean, it's pieces like this that will help us explain the story and what's changed and how that's affecting freight flows. So thank you for that.
Jolene, let's.
And then that ties into, you have the last mile delivery, that ties right into that, because that's the volume that makes that last mile delivery keeps growing, and more and more companies are popping up.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
It's really true.
The whole landscape.
I mean, the other thing that has changed, and then again, I'll let Alan explain it more, but Mexico significantly changed their processing system at customs, and Tijuana is the pilot for that through their BITA program. And that's sort of a whole automation process for processing cargo. And I know the CBP was sort of like looking out to see if this works, so they may implement it in the future. It's sort of rolling out through a pilot program right now, but it's definitely one of those major changes in cargo.
It's a huge
very nice segue into our third question, by the way, all of you.
Yeah, and Alejandro, thanks so much. I want to add that Madison from Farron Pierce on our team here is capturing comments, so everything's getting recorded. Thanks for doing that, Madison. And yeah, let's talk about this. Thanks for adding that, Alejandro. Actually, I think Carrie is going to frame this one for us. Jolene, we have some folks that have already picked up their pens and talked about tariffs and USMCA and CBP operations. Carrie, do you want to frame this for us a little bit?
Yeah, I think the last part of the discussion for the last point really was segueing into this topic, which is great. So here we're looking at exactly what tariffs had impacts on freight flows. Also USMCA, I know it's hard because USMCA was enacted basically when COVID hit. So it's, I know, kind of hard to gauge on its own, but differences between NAFTA, USMCA, and I think Alejandro and Alan, you really hit on the CBP operations, what's changed, but if you have other points too that you'd like to highlight. And if others from the Port of San Diego, and port tenants, and also the airports as well, I think that would be helpful too. And I know that we had someone from rail on the call. I think she might have dropped off, but if anyone else has a rail
BNSF, yeah.
Yeah.
So Carrie, there's a few notes here that some of our folks have been able to add. Import duties impacted SoCal, opportunities for the region to offer services for this. Is that good insight there for you?
Yeah, I think one thing too, this is going to get a little broader, but are there impacts maybe that we're seeing from tariffs at not even just locally, but also statewide? I'm thinking like ports at LA Long Beach have a strong connection to our border also. So maybe discussing that, and obviously again, Port of San Diego, I know, I'm sure the tariffs might have had some impacts for you as well. So I think any more deeper inside knowledge on that would be great.
But what changed dramatically in the last couple of years were obviously the China trade war with the US, and really those tariffs have shifted some production lines. But in terms of USMCA and NAFTA, the tariffs are pretty similar, other than the automotive industry, which we really, I mean, it hasn't had that significant impact, I think, in this region. I mean, I may be wrong, but in terms of the tariffs, it's USMCA was huge for our region because the tariffs didn't go up, but it's basically sort of the same. Thankfully, it's just consolidating what we had.
And another thing that, you have to throw in there is that the exchange rate between the US dollar and Mexican peso, it was stable. It was stable all last year, as well as now. So that's one thing is even during the pandemic, as far as us as a supply chain company, and we never slowed down. Our business was constant all year. So it's a lot of that had to do with the exchange rate that was stable. One thing, like you talked before, Carrie, is and Alejandra, is that we manage a lot of produce and food shipments, both going from the United States to Mexico and Mexico to the United States. And so we do work with the Mexican officials. Their USDA equivalent is called SOGARPA. So they have their inspectors now on the US side here in Otay Mesa. So we manage those inspections on the US side. Here in this warehouse we have in Otay Mesa, we have the USDA inspectors in our facility to manage Roma tomatoes that are coming up from Mexico in our facility. So that interchange of inspections has helped the trade flow and the crossing times tremendously.
Can you speak to how unified cargo processing in general has really helped? Because I think, yeah, that's a big change from the last study.
Yeah, Alan,
Was that a question? Like, can we
Oh,
speak to that?
yeah, can you speak to that a little more? Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Well, we've only heard positive impacts from unified cargo processing. I guess there's still some streamlining to be done or room for improvement, but definitely this sort of started from that. Originally, we had like a unified cargo processing for certain perishable goods in Tijuana, and if you want to call it that didn't really work. So everything was moved to the US side. And in general, I think it has had some very positive effects. I mean, that's sort of what I can say. I don't know if Alan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's had effects on just everything as far as the Mexican customs working the same hours as US customs. The change for digital, a lot of documentation now is we send digital versus paper. That was huge. Keeping the cold supply intact. That's coordinating the inspections on both sides of the border, keeps the products in the cold chain, where you eliminate a lot of the risks for mold and whatnot, and not maintaining the temperature. So that was another thing that was this process improvement, that it all affected everything. So it's going really well. Like Alejandra said, it's gone for the better, and we're continuing to look at how we can better be more efficient in managing that, especially on the cold supply chain.
What hasn't gone that smoothly, and again, I'll let Alan explain, and I'm sorry, Alan. The PITA program, which is this automated processing program that Mexican Customs is rolling out. We had some hiccups, significant hiccups, because they made sort of like the pilot more of a mandatory. Well, basically, they basically said the majority of the lanes are going to be used for this program only, and that's when we started seeing the backlogs. But that's something that could drastically change wait times as well. Hopefully hopefully they'll be reduced. But that's another sort of trend I think that will be important to watch. Again, this is a pilot that's starting in Tijuana. Supposedly it started 2 years ago and it was going to be rolled out throughout the US-Mexico border. I don't believe that has been the case, but it's a significant change, is my point. Both northbound and southbound.
Great, thank you. Those are really good insights.
One last thing, just to note is, and it went pretty smoothly. Mexico used to have a harmonized care code system of 8 digits, where the United States has 10 digits. And in October, I think October or December, I can't remember. But anyway, Mexico switched to a 10-digit harmonized tariff code system. So we thought that was going to be delays at the border, just because if the systems weren't ready on customs sides to manage the 10-digit, which is the old 8-digit, but it's gone pretty well. So right now, Mexico's managing the 10-digit harmonized code system.
Just to comment, Unified Cargo Processing is not southbound, correct, Alan? I just noted in the box, what I was referring to was the PITA program. That's Mexican Customs.
You're correct.
Unified Cargo Processing is only northbound.
Good catch.
And just for everyone, that's basically where at the U.S. port of entry, it's basically we have both Mexican inspectors and U.S. inspectors processing cargo. I don't want to say at the same time, but almost at the same time. Just want to call it that for practical reasons.
Great, thank you for all those great insights. Did anyone else want to chime in from the other modes potentially? If not, I think we might have enough time for the last topic if we want to transition.
Yeah, that sounds great, Carrie. Let's shift over. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Carrie.
David.
Yeah. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Carrie and team. I just I put a couple things in there actually for number 2 and number 4, because I've got 11:30 I'm going to have to jump off for, unless that got canceled. So I just put in StrawNet and StracNet, which is the strategic highway network for roads, and StracNet, which is the strategic highway rail connection. And again, the StracNet's aligned with the Lausanne corridor, because it is part of the federal/DOD strategic rail connection. And just recommend people do some research on that if they don't have it yet. And then StrawNet, the I-5 is the StrawNet connector, and Harbor Drive is this, I-5 is a StrawNet highway for the area, and the Harbor Drive is a StrawNet connector for Navy Base San Diego, and each base has a StrawNet connector for the area, and I can share those in another meeting or with a follow-up. And then just with the ZEV technology and workforce, because I think that's where we're going next, is just the challenges between the Department of Defense, Department of Transportation, and CA, California state funding and planning efforts, because there's a lot of boundary lines that need to get coordinated through to make sure, certain things can be done on.
Sorry, David, you went into frozen land for a moment. Let's see if you come back here. Not sure if you're able to hear us, but unfortunately your internet got the better of you and has you frozen, and we're not able to hear you.
And just one thing I'll work with Carrie to follow up with him. If there have been any changes or proposed changes to the StrawNet or StracNet, those are things that we'd want to capture, because they're not super easy to change. There's a fairly there's a process that you have to go through in order to change those. So I don't know if the discussion about those is just identifying what they are and where they are, or if there are proposed changes that we need to pay attention to.
And also, just to piggyback, Jolene, if there have been changes in how the DoD is moving any of their goods too, I think that'd be something that'd be worthwhile. Dave, I think you're back now. Sorry, you froze for a second.
Yeah, I got dropped like a box of rocks. Gonna try
Wasn't.
to make a challenge with. Yeah, so when did you lose me?
I think we caught part of what you were talking about with the ZE piece and funding and all of that. And I think what you missed was my follow-up on the STRANET and TrackNet. Are there any proposed changes to it? It's just wondering why you were bringing it up, or is it just making sure that we include what those facilities are?
It's making sure that it's part of the dialogue, because if we're going to go after additional funding, it's, you know, the same corridors that we're moving freight have a strategic importance, and there's a lot of alignment with that. So if we're going to request for improvements,
Uh-oh, we're going to lose them again.
Oh, shoot, David.
Yeah, but it is really helpful for the PIDP program, for example. And I know Stephen and Amy are probably fairly familiar with that one. So I know Port of Long Beach, I helped them get some Tiger or some PIDP money recently for a rail facility for that very reason, because it was strategic outlaw place for the port. But that's a really, I mean, funding is a big piece of all of this.
Indeed.
So it's a good point. As far as the zero emission stuff,
I heard the last of it. Just
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, we will make sure that we capture the funding issues associated with anything that comes out of this. And that's really for the RTP to be highlighting. And I know Elisa and Carrie are probably all over that. But on the zero emission technology, this is where the workforce piece will come into. So if you have, especially on the industry side, and we've heard a lot of great feedback from many of you, but what you might be experiencing right now with trying to convert either to zero emission or automated facilities, and how that's affecting your business and what some of the challenges or barriers are to implementation.
Yeah, so Jolene, we do have folks have picked up on the task of adding some comments here for our ZEV and technology workforce. You know, do you want me to chat about a few of these? You know, the drone safety and security. Anybody, any new insights or new looks at what's happening with drone safety? I know on a previous call we had with David talking about, the Navy's not a big fan of those drone deliveries, so. We've got that on here. Availability of MD/HD ZEVs. Is that making sense, Jolene?
Yeah, wait, I'm trying to see the note. You said MD versus HD. With
medium duty versus heavy duty. Right.
Okay, great. That makes good. Thank you, Carrie.
No worries. And then I know a few on the call here are experts on ZEVs, and a few actually thinking about port tenants have actually, they're doing a pilot right now with some ZEV technology. So I really appreciate any comments from you or anyone else that would like to participate.
And there's also, I'm sorry, one other thing to think about is just the possibility of having co-location of truck parking plus future plug-in for those trucks to park. And that's not just on the truck charging side, but also on the reefers. So we know that it's a similar voltage that's required to charge and to keep the reefers going.
Yeah, Jolene, that's something we're working on and looking at. I think with truck charging, one thing that'll be interesting is do you almost need two types of charging? You have the local kind of, right? If we invest in some trucks with tenants, right, those will be charged locally and they'll have their own spots. versus medium and heavy duty trucks coming from the LA area that might need more like general use charging, right? And how do we locate one versus the other? And then I think the other big one for us is as we're going for all these grant opportunities that are coming out, our region tends to have lower utilization rates on equipment. Not just trucks, but especially for the port, like having one terminal and having it kind of being general use. We have a lot of different equipment, but most of it's not used a whole lot. And so a big challenge for us in moving to ZEV is there aren't a lot of programs out there for lower utilization regions. And I imagine that could be a challenge for trucking as well.
Could be. The other piece of this puzzle, I think, on the ZEV is how it will affect, or will it affect, the cross-border, especially with dual licensing. So if any of you have any insight on that issue from the industry side, that'd be a good perspective to bring.
Carrie, this is Mike Bullen. I just have a little bit to add. I'm happy that you guys are including the zero and the near zero. And my company actually can build stations for either one. We're strongly involved right now in the natural gas fuel side. And just a little bit to add to the natural gas vehicles, the availability is really easy for those. All the big manufacturers are offering those trucks. So that's something that's, I think, a positive. And the range is pretty significant in that they're getting 600, like 1,000-mile range. So quite a nice advantage there when compared to what the diesel trucks can do. So they really match up well. So just wanted to give a plug for the natural gas vehicles. And another nice advantage is if you're using the renewable natural gas, and you take in consideration the emissions that was required to make the electricity, in many cases, the near zeros are even cleaner. So that's something to understand.
That's a good point. And
Yeah, thank you,
So,
Michael. For
Jolene, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Ty.
I was just going to say, let's make sure that we take a look at the alternative corridors activities and see how those dovetail in with the facilities for the natural gas trucks as well.
Sure. Yeah, and the product for the medium duty to the heavy duty, there's good availability. So that's a plus for that segment.
the other thing that we've heard with the RNGs or natural gas versus the electric is just the technicians available to work on those. Natural gas is much more similar to diesel, so workforce, it's not as much of an issue.
It's a much more mature technology. It's been around for quite a long time and many stages of development. And what's nice is we're seeing, especially in California, we're seeing kind of an overflow of fleets like the transit agencies, the big school districts and so forth. Technicians are leaving and going to different companies. So we have kind of a cross-pollination of talent in that area. And so that's kind of a plus. And for whatever it's worth, the fuel is even cheaper than diesel. So the fleet operators really like that.
Another point, I think, from a regional perspective.
Oh, sorry, Ty.
Yeah, another point that we need to make note of here as a team is just the entire chain of production for both types of trucks and the delivery of fuel. I think that's from a regional perspective. I think that is something that we probably need to look at pretty closely so that there's an awareness around that. And that was a good point also, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evans, did you have something to say?
Yeah, Michael, I definitely, I think the port, in speaking with the community about natural gas, for some reason, it seems like their impression has been that it's not much cleaner than diesel, or maybe no more attractive. They're really pushing us to do zero emission, and have kind of talk like near zero is not what they're looking for. And so I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's kind of, I think we either need to do an education piece to convince the community that
Sure.
near zero is okay. But it seems like they really want either battery powered electric or hydrogen powered. It seems like
Yeah,
natural gas doesn't help.
It helps tremendously. The science, if you just look at the emissions levels, the EPA standard for the NOx, which is one of the major pollutants, and the PM, on the NOx side, the near zeros are 1/10 of what the EPA standard is for diesel. When you combine the RNG with that, it drops even to below zero. So significant, huge different changes. And the PM, the particulate matter, is less than half. So big advantages for using the near zero.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the community has to get on board though somehow. We have to get them on
Yes.
board.
And
Because
there's
if,
also the ARB regulations, which is the other.
Right.
So getting ARB to accept that RNG is as clean as electric is the other challenge, for
Right.
especially for all of these agencies as they move forward with trying to comply with ARB, and all the industry partners trying to comply with ARB.
Right.
Sharon Cloward here. I just want to, Stephen, thank you for that, because the community needs to be involved as far as education. And one of the things the port's going to be doing, an update on their MCAS study, which will be on February 11th. And we're going to join in on talk about what we've learned from our grant. And I will tell you, just trying to get truckers involved in something. We worked with a trucking company. It turns out they only own 4 of the many trucks that they have, just to get them to do this fast signal prioritization. So that communication, we really need trucking companies here. I mean, we really do. We can all talk about infrastructure and everything else, but truckers are going to do what they want to do because a lot of them are individually owned.
Yeah.
And then secondly, what Stephen brought up, I know what the community wants, but they don't know what they don't know. And so I think we really need to give those science and have that. And I would like to see one of our SANDAG meetings where we invite the community in so we can have an education with experts on there to explain what the different types of fuel or electric that we're using. Because I just find there's so much I've learned on this grant, and it's like an elephant, a bite at a time, but the education has to happen because I just don't think they don't know what they don't know. So.
Really good points. Sharon, I'm glad you brought that up because I know that was brought up in another meeting that we had regarding doing some forum for educating kind of the population and ourselves too on the different technologies. So I think we were starting to work on that. So hopefully soon. I'm not sure if it'll be at a Freight Stakeholders Working Group or another meeting, but we'll definitely keep you updated because I think it is needed. I know we only have 1 more minute, and I thank you all for all these wonderful comments. This is excellent. I think, did we team want to just jump in on the next steps really quick and then we can close the meeting?
Yeah, do we want to shift back over to the mural board is in wonderful shape. Thank you so much for chiming in. Carrie, as we go to next steps, I think that you're going to grab the screen share. Perfect. Thanks so much. And do you want to talk through those, Carrie?
Sure. So just really quick, I know we're at the
bell
1:30 time. So right now the team is doing a lot of data connection and analysis. So we're hoping at our next meeting to present some of those findings. We're hoping late March, tentatively. So you could see that the existing conditions here, and we would like your feedback. Today was a wonderful discussion, and I think we would want the same thing when we present those existing conditions to you all. And then really quickly, if you have other recommendations for other stakeholders that we should engage with and invite to the next Freight Stakeholders Working Group, please let us know. I think you all have my email. Please email me or the team because we really do want to make sure we cast a wide net and get everyone that we can to comment on what we're seeing in the data. Again, the data from the study is going to be crucial for upcoming plans, and some of those plans that were mentioned earlier actually will be pulling some of this data. So we want to make sure it's correct and that we're ground truthing it. So with that,
Carrie, I just wanted to say on behalf of SANDAG, we really appreciate all the insights that we received from the team today. We've had what I call our traditional partners, but also a lot of industry representation. So that's wonderful. Also, we had Caltrans headquarters from their Office of Freight Plan also participating, Michael Morris from the Federal Highway Administration. So this was a rich discussion. Kudos to Carrie and the consultant team also for organizing us and getting this out to you so we can get your feedback. And just drop us a note if you think of something else as you move on your day or this week. Just let us know what your thoughts are. This is extremely valuable for us, and we truly appreciate your participation.
Thank you, Lisa, for that note. We really do.
Carrie, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
Because that picture, that's Otay Mesa, and I remember those days. A horrible picture, but it was certainly our reality. And I guess my point with the zero emissions and the trucks being so far from getting there, I think, is there an interim, project to do some sort of reservation system for trucks to actually, like, for example, go to the port of entry, like they could be charging their truck while they have a reservation system at the port? Is that something that's being analyzed, or is it going on anywhere else in the world that maybe we could learn from?
That's a great question, Alejandra. Not to pick on anyone, but Stephen, if you're still on the call, I know that you had mentioned something very similar.
Yeah, it's something we'd be interested in. We're not quite there yet, but our largest freight mover is Pasha, right? The Merdole, and Pasha does have a facility in Otay, and they actually move the cars back and forth between. They're using electric trucks now. So they've really been prioritizing that effort to reduce their emissions with that. But we've thought that facility, a corner of that facility, might be a place where people could go and park and wait to go into the, schedule appointments in the future. But right now it's really just an idea. So if people have ideas for how to make it move forward, we'd be interested in talking, sure.
This is Mike again. Just one more little tidbit. There's hybrid CNG, hybrid natural gas, electric natural gas vehicles, which is a perfect solution for the crossing the borders and the ports, because as you're waiting in line, you could be on electricity. And then, when you're on the road, on the highway, you could be on natural gas. So really nice combination. And those vehicles are just in demonstration right now.
Interesting.
Thank you for both comments. Those are great. And I think we'll have some follow-ups. So I know we're over our allotted time, so I really hate to cut our discussion, but I'm hoping we can have a great discussion in our next Great Stakeholders Working Group. And again, thank you all. We really do appreciate these comments. They were really valuable. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and you'll be hearing from us soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.